It's great to be with everybody today. Truly is. I've been looking forward to this. I love to talk about pilgrimage. I especially love it now because as Robert said, this doesn't mean you have to go to Spain or somewhere else. Actually, I try to have a sort of pilgrimage every morning. But I actually did get in May to spend 7 days on a pilgrimage in Ireland, and it was quite amazing. So it just helped enrich what I'm excited about. But pilgrimage is kind of I think, a mysterious, little known concept for us. Uh, I imagine one we're not used to using. We often do think of it for the walk in Spain and Portugal, or maybe something going to people go to the Vatican for Catholics, or for to Jerusalem for Jews. But we figure that's something for other people and not for us many times. And I want to give you just a couple of quotes by an author, Phil Casino, who wrote The Art of Pilgrimage, who said, "A pilgrimage is a transformative journey to a sacred center. A pilgrimage is a spiritual exercise, an act of devotion. It's a powerful metaphor for any journey with the purpose of finding something that matters deeply. A pilgrimage is a kind of journeying from mindless to mindful, soulless to soulful travel. The difference may be subtle or dramatic. By definition, it's life-changing. And with a deepening of focus, keen preparation, attention to the path below our feet, and respect for the destination at hand, it's possible to transform even the most ordinary journey into a pilgrimage." And that's a lot of what we're going to be talking about this morning or afternoon or evening, wherever you are. But I want to begin with a prayer. This is a written prayer from Celtic Blessings and Prayers, Making All Things Sacred. Father, you've called us to a pilgrimage of faith. The light of your truth summons us, and the call of faith is a constant challenge on our journey. We give thanks for the desire to seek you. We give thanks for the voices from the past that offer guidance, for signposts pointing us to the next stage, for companions who share the journey, for footsteps in the sand of pilgrims before us, for the conviction that unseen but not unknown, you are with us. Father, keep us faithful to the vision and steadfast on our pilgrimage, with that distant goal may become a reality, and faith at last lead to sight. There's actually a lot of biblical examples of pilgrimage. Of course, probably one of the most well-known would be Abraham, who went on quite a journey. And many of these are mentioned in Hebrews 11, 8 through 16. I'm going to read this from the Message. By an act of faith, Abraham said yes to God's call to travel to an unknown place that would become his home. When he left, he had no idea where he was going. By an act of faith, he lived in the country promised him, lived as a stranger, camping in tents. Isaac and Jacob did the same, living under the same promise. Abraham did it by keeping his eye on an unseen city with real eternal foundations, the city designed and built by God. By faith, barren Sarah was able to become pregnant, old woman as she was at the time, because she believed the one who had made a promise would do what he said. That's how it happened, that from one man's dead and shriveled loins, there are now people numbering into the millions. Each one of these people of faith died not yet having in hand what was promised, but still believing. How did they do it? They saw it way off in the distance, waved their greeting, and accepted the fact that they were transients in this world. People who live this way make it plain they are looking for their true home. If they were homesick for the old country, they could have gone back anytime they wanted, but they were after a far better country, heaven country. You can see why God is so proud of them and has a city waiting for them. And I love reading it in this version. It just reminds me just how you know, Abraham was real, Sarah was real. They were on a pilgrimage. And really, we are all on a pilgrimage, no matter what we think we have planned this afternoon. Having the attitude of a pilgrim throughout every day of life makes so much difference. We read of pilgrimages of the Jews, for instance, in Psalm 120 through 134 are the Psalms of Ascent, or they were called the pilgrim songs, pilgrimage songs, likely sung by worshipers as they ascended the road to Jerusalem to attend 3 pilgrim festivals, and that's from Deuteronomy 16:16. And another study suggests they were composed for a celebration after Nehemiah's rebuilding of Jerusalem's walls in 445 BC. But either way, these pilgrimages, they were intentional and these were communal. There are some known walks and then some accidental pilgrimages of discovery. Saul was on a road to Damascus, a walk that turned into quite something different as he was on his way to Damascus than he had thought. Many times we discover things while we're on a road, while we're traveling. The road to Emmaus, on pilgrimage of sort, no matter how they were begun, we find testing, discovery, contemplation, fasting. All of these things occurred. A lot of things can happen along our day walk of pilgrimage. I believe that God is all for pilgrimages, and many times he sends people into pilgrimages. Just think of how the Holy Spirit sent Jesus into the wilderness after his baptism, before beginning his ministry. And we can easily forget, Paul didn't just, after his conversion, he didn't just get up and start preaching immediately. He spent 3 years in the desert on a pilgrimage before becoming the messenger to the Gentiles. In just a few historical examples, there are 3 ancient pilgrimage festivals in Jerusalem: Pesach, which was Passover; Shavuot, weeks or Pentecost; and Sukkot, the Feast of Tabernacles. Tabernacles. But when the ancient Israelites living in the kingdom of Judah, they would make pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem that was commanded in the Torah. And in Jerusalem, they would participate in festivities and ritual worship in conjunction with the services of the priests at the temple. God knows we need markings. We need certain things that we celebrate, that they were intentional toward. During the Jewish holidays in modern day Israel, many observant Jews living in or near Jerusalem make an effort to attend prayer services at the Western Wall, emulating the ancient pilgrimages in some fashion. Samaritans make pilgrimages to Mount Gerizim 3 times a year to this date. And these were significant communal events. And we're not used to those. We don't practice those. And yet, how different some of our forming might be if we had, when we've gone through maybe some real challenges within the church. How might it be different to have some kind of journey or walk together of lament and a refocusing? Things that just don't cross our minds, because these are the ancient Near Eastern ways of doing things that are so far from our Western world. But these were significant communal events. They can be pilgrimages can be communal or personal or both. And I want to go over a few qualities that seem to be common for pilgrimages. One is they're intentional. They involve a journey of some kind. There may be for growth. They might be for clarity. They might be for connection. They're often iconic, involving some kind of a special place or festival or feast remembered symbolically. We get connected to places. Recently I did a whole just remembrance, kind of a pilgrimage about the places I had lived in life. and how they had impacted me, what I learned, what I took away. And it was very clarifying for me of just some different ways I was formed. And then we've got to have the attitude. There must be an attitude of being a pilgrim, a sense that this world is not my home. But for any kind of a journey, any kind of a pilgrimage, it takes time. But because we're so interrelated, our body, mind, soul, and spirit, there is a physiological combination of walking and contemplation that does something. It works in our mind and our heart. There's something about walking and processing and growing. Studies show that walking boosts brain power. It lifts our mood. Research suggests that fast walking at least 35 minutes a day, 5 days a week, can improve our mood and reduce mild to moderate depression symptoms. It also sparks creativity. This is interesting. A recent study suggests that walking, whether on a treadmill or hiking on a trail, boosted creativity by about 60% compared with sitting. And I have this does walking changes me, and I try to walk several miles every single day. I have a place along the river and a trail, and I think that has helped me and changed me more than about anything in life. And it also, I don't know, it's particularly meaningful to me because for the last 3 years of my husband's life, someone who loved to run, who loved to be athletic, he lost his ability to walk and to move, to do anything. And every step I take, I try to, or every walk I take, I feel so grateful for just the ability to take those steps. I don't take them for granted so much anymore. In the 1960s, there was a Japanese theologian, Kasuku Kiyoma, who wrote a book called The 3 Mile an Hour God. And he noticed that the average speed that human beings walk is 3 miles an hour. Jesus, who's God, walked at 3 miles per hour, so likely. And God, then, who is love, has a speed, walked at 3 miles an hour. Love has a speed, Kiyoma says, and that speed is slow. That speed is gentle. That speed is tender. And yet, wow, this is such a hard one. As Americans, those who are from America here, I'm speaking as an American, and for those of you in other places who maybe don't have this dilemma quite as much, some of the Eastern countries are a bit slower pace, I have heard. But as Americans, we're interested in speed, productivity, and efficiency. And Jesus, who created the universe, the God who throws the stars into heavens, is not in a hurry. A God who takes time to love. And when we begin to view God in this rather countercultural way, things start to change for us. I really believe that. If Jesus was walking at 3 miles an hour, and I'm walking at 9 miles an hour, who's following who? Are we really following Jesus if we're too fast? There are stages and phases of a pilgrimage journey. And we'll talk a little more about these, but there's some kind of a longing, some kind of a call that we're really wanting to get clarity for, that we're wanting to address. Or maybe it's just because we don't feel enough of a call, or we feel flat. And that might be the longing for something more. And then there's a preparation, a getting ready. There's a setting out. And there's an intentional crossing of the threshold. And that's something I learned, just to have an intent on a walk. There are certain, when I go for my walk, there's a little kind of gateway I pass through. And that's almost like, okay, it's sacred time. I'm crossing this threshold now. This is my journey. It also is a phase of encountering the sacred. But along that encounter is what we're looking for are adventures and difficulties, midway decisions, doubt and hope, drawing near. And it is usually in those, as you know, and have experienced those adventures and difficulties and doubts and hope when we learn to most closely encounter the sacred. I know it's been that for me in the deepest, darkest times of my soul when I have found God's presence most profound. And again, there are people going through so much, so I don't even like to compare things. It's interesting. I feel like life sometimes becomes too much of an adventure. We go through hard stuff. I felt like I was going through some pretty hard things involved with some relational dynamics around here. And, I had some friends over, and the house next door to me is where they live. They're my tenants. I own the house. And as we're having dinner, look out the window, and the house is ablaze in flame and burned down. And thought, okay, this is not exactly how I expected my Tuesday to go. But thank God everybody was safe, and even the dog was rescued heroically. But we along our pilgrimages, we find many things we don't expect. And yet I believe God works them all to help us encounter the sacred, even the things that are from Satan, the things that aren't the peace that God intended for us to have in creation. And then there's the arrival, the climax of the journey. And then there's reflection and redirection. And these are all stages of a pilgrimage, phases. A few more quotes from Cousteau, who wrote The Art of Pilgrimage. What matters most on your journey is how deeply you see, how attentively you hear, how richly the encounters are felt in your heart and soul. The difference between a pilgrim and tourist is the intention of attention, the quality of the curiosity. And I love those quotes because there's so much truth in them. So many times we just walk or we just go instead of really seeking to encounter the presence of God along the way, no matter what is happening. And that takes a quality of curiosity, and it takes an intention of attention and an attentive ear. And those things do bring rich encounters that we do feel in our heart and soul. In the book, The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry, there's this quote. He says, a few days ago, at the end of the day, I noted my day. Today, I noticed glass-like raindrops on a weed, listened to water flowing over rocks in the brook in my backyard, heard church. Oh, no, I'm sorry. This isn't a quote. This is actually something I wrote. Well, that sounds familiar, like my day. No, this was after reading that, I wrote this because it's things I would not have noticed unless I had taken the time. So a few days ago, at the end of the day, I noted my day. Today, I noticed glass-like raindrops on a weed. I listened to water flowing over rocks in the brook in my backyard. I heard church bells toll. I watched dogs play. I saw little girls playing soccer. I watched young boys playing baseball. I had lunch with my grandson. I talked to a new friend in the town center, spoke to an old man sitting on a bench, watched a wedding rehearsal at the river, talked to a guy fishing on the dock, watched a couple cuddled together on a park bench listening to worship music. I drank iced coffee. I watched the sunset over the river, baked cookies for a guy who was installing a fence in my yard because it was his birthday, transferred a bug to a more fitting place than my living room, listened to music, read, made some calls, and did homework. A good, good day. I thank God for the many, many blessings he gives. Sometimes it's the little things, things I often miss before I slowed down a bit. And unless I'm on an intentional journey, intentional pilgrimage, I would never notice those things. I would never stop and do those things. And at the end of that day, it was a good, good day. And those are like normal things. And usually I don't take the time to transfer a bug. I usually would just, okay, this bug has life. I'm going to transfer it. But uh, as the book title states, we've got to have the ruthless elimination of hurry. And this is hard. It is so, so hard. And I just want to encourage each of you to slow down and experience pilgrimage. We can experience it in various ways. A pilgrimage of sorts, it brings a clarity in transitions. I'm going to hold off on that because I'm getting ahead of myself. And looking through transitions has been important to me, marking my transition. As was mentioned in the introduction, in the past few years, I've become a widow. I've sold my house, moved to another city, moved into a new house, retired. Now I've had a house burned down. Lots of change. I've needed clarity, and I've needed to acknowledge, contemplate, and mark the transitions in order to grow with God. And walks, pilgrimages, intentional journey has helped me to do that. Maybe it's going to the place of your baptism or a significant event or a place where you experienced trauma or where you were married. For me, it can be certain times of remembrance, a spiritual journey. I like to sometimes collect stones of remembrance. I felt a bit dull a while back, and I thought I need to do an intentional pilgrimage walk of grief. I felt a little numb, and so I'll share a few things because I share these personal accounts because hopefully they will help you kind of open up some spaces to think, okay, I maybe I need time for a journey through my transitions, or a journey through some grief, a journey through a lot of fast-paced things that have been happening. And I wrote these things after a very specific pilgrimage walk that I did. And I'm not talking like 5 hours, I'm talking probably 1 hour. But as I came back, I wanted to write the things down because that helps me, journaling in some way to do that. So after this intentional pilgrimage walk of grief, said I heard birds singing, accompanied by the light panting of my canine companion as we walked our familiar morning river walk trail during the noontide heat of the day. I listened carefully to the rhythm of my footsteps on the gravel sounds, pronounced steady and predictable. But life doesn't feel predictable. I search for tears, but they don't come. I miss my best friend, my soulmate, my lover, my companion, my husband. He never even got to enjoy retirement. Today's walk feels like an intentional pilgrimage of sorts, an intentional journey for grieving. Sometimes grief feels trapped inside my bones and needs to be released, but can also get stuck. And then I go through some just specific things I remember about him and some different losses that I felt, even with some dear friends of mine who I've also lost. I only journeyed an hour this time. I'm not sure how successful I felt the pilgrimage to be. The emotions I hoped to meet are stuck today. They always find their way out, though. The sounds of my footsteps are the loudest voices from my time today. They step in predictable rhythm, but consistent movement, one foot in front of the other. On this river path, I know where I'm going. On my grief pilgrimage, I'm not quite sure where it will take me. I borrow words from Eugene Peterson. who said, I came across a poem by Denise Levertov in which she uses the phrase, every step an arrival. She was giving an account of her development as a poet. I recognized in her phrase a metaphor for my own formation as a pastor, every step along the way, becoming the pastor I didn't know I was becoming and the person I now am, an essential component that was silently and slowly being integrated into a coherent life and vocation, an arrival. And then the next day, I walked through, just some what I felt like had been drinking from a fire hydrant on my educational journey. And then the next day of walking was my walk towards Father's Day. Knowing that grief is lurking in the shadows, I felt the need to engage it more fully. So today's pilgrimage walk was devoted to grief and gratitude-filled walk with the earthly fathers in my life. I recalled the ways I admired my dad. I felt close to him, the relationship between parents and children more authoritative and less friend-based in their generation. However, I remembered these things specifically. And I went through some very specific things that I remembered because a lot of times I just don't do that. And I know that remembering things intentionally helps me to connect, whether they're a father figure, whether they're someone who's been meaningful to us, or whether it's something I need to grieve. And then remembering my husband, I feel such gratitude for him as dad to our kids, but deep pain as tears stream down that he can't be here to continue the boat rides, the vacations, the birthdays, the ball games, graduations, and weddings. I ask, can you see us from where you live? I don't know how that works, but we do hold you in our hearts and always will. You're the victor, but we must wait and remember and be thankful for the beautiful memories. As I recount ways God has spoken into my heart while on these pilgrimages, I notice a theme that surprised me. And that's what happens a lot when we're noticing, when we're doing something intentional. We find themes. It has to do with endings. The end of life I knew, the end of my grad school journey, the end of having a dad and a husband. I've grieved as I journeyed, but I felt God's ministering presence. I'm learning more of who I am with him at this stage of life. Today, I walked and intentionally thought about endings. I just turned in my first draft of dissertation, and I was surprised, and instead of feeling excitement, I felt sad because the journey's been invigorating. Endings bring new transitions. As I came back from this walk, I pulled a book out of my mailbox I'd ordered several weeks ago. On the back cover was this paragraph. My contention is that you're right where you're supposed to be. This may look like barren sand to you, but nothing could be further from the truth. I say to you that as you lay your head down tonight, you're sleeping on fertile ground. Think, learn, pray, plan, dream, for soon you will become. And that's the back cover of The Noticer by Andy Andrews. This seemed a fitting ending to this pilgrimage as I closed the mailbox flap and headed inside. I'm learning who I am now beyond wife, mother, and minister. I'm not sure where it's all going. And, then just shared a little more. But so my pilgrimages have looked at endings that are taking me to places yet unknown. Everywhere I go, I find the Spirit's guidance often surprising me. These places require that I go to the edge of all the light I see and take one more step. And I hope that as you do pilgrimages and practice this, that they can help you in your journey. Recently I also walked a thing called a labyrinth, and I've never done that before. That seemed a really strange thing to me, but it's kind of a short pilgrimage walk. You can maybe Google where one is near you if you want to try it. A lot of times, Catholic universities might have them somewhere on their ground, but I don't think I have a picture of that. Yeah. But anyhow, it's naming your intention, and it's kind of going around this little thing, and you kind of stop and think and meditate in order to hear and respond to the Lord and invite God to walk with you. You walk a path, and there's something intentional about entering a path, knowing that God is with you. and stopping along the way to give thanks and reflect. Now, you don't need a labyrinth to do this. This can be any kind of intentional walk. And, we can walk it in silent meditation, attentive to every step and breath. We can pray a specific prayer. Uh, you know, we can just pray God's name in different ways, different aspects of his name. We can pray a psalm. We can, in Psalms and reflect on how he's our rock and our fortress. Or the gospel, according to Luke, who describes God as a mother hen, sheltering her chicks beneath her wings. And with each step, allowing another name for God to kind of rise up to the surface: Redeemer, Savior, Lover, my rock, faithful, friend, shield, teacher, spouse, light in darkness, divine gardener. And heart of my heart. And sometimes as we walk with those intentions, it's just, it can be a beautiful thing. And I like to have some kind of a stone or just something physical that's a remembrance, that's almost like, wait, this was an intentional pilgrimage that I leave there or that I carry home. And I think these are really, really helpful. Our pilgrimage might not be in a foreign land or for days, and it can be nuanced in a number of ways. And here are a few ideas for a pilgrimage. Taking a spiritual retreat, going somewhere quiet and safe, taking a few hours to connect with God without any technology. And I think to get the most out of it, we've got to have some intentional time of solitude, which is hard. I had an assignment for a class for 4 days every week for the entire semester. We had to spend 1/2 hour in solitude. I mean, just complete quiet, and including in that, not just allowing God to enter, not even prayers of intercession for people, but to really let God speak to us. It's hard. You can ask yourself questions like, what are ways I hope to grow in my relationship with God, including any fears, hindrances, blocks, anxieties, or sins that might hinder my progress. Try writing a letter to yourself from God. After praying, write down as a letter to you what you believe God is communicating to you at this time. That's a practice that really helped me in my closeness with God, because the first time I did that, I started just weeping, because I think for the first time I really believed God was expressing his love to me and his desire to be with me, his joy to be with me. And I was just like, well, it's such a, I needed that. And take a guided walk. And I have on there, if I knew how to make one of those code things, I would have done it. So you could have just do that. But I highly recommend this. This is it's from a Play As You Go app, but this will take you right to it. And it's a guided walk, 45 minutes. And it's just, gives you some time to slow down, to relax. It's not a lot of talking, but has specific, like, intentional crossing of the threshold, things to notice, things to look for, reminders of listening to God, of nature around you. And I found that really, really helpful. So that's something you may really enjoy. I love this, again, from the Message, from Isaiah 2, 1-3. The message Isaiah got regarding Judah and Jerusalem. There's a day coming when the mountain of God's house will be the mountain, solid, towering over all mountains. All nations will river toward it. People from all over set out for it. They'll say, come, let's climb God's mountain. Go to the house of the God of Jacob. He'll show us the way he works so we can live the way we're made. So we can live the way we're made. So Let's climb God's mountain, watch God work, and live the way we're meant to be. And I want to close this time, and then we'll have some time for questions, answers, and discussion, but with a prayer uh, from John Bell from the Iona community on the Psalms that we'll close out with. Will you come and follow me if I but call your name? Will you go where you don't know and never be the same? Will you let my love be shown? Will you let my name be known? Will you let my life be grown in you and you in me? Will you leave yourself behind if I but call your name? Will you care for cruel and kind and never be the same? Will you risk the hostile stare should your life attract or scare? Will you let me answer prayer in you and you and me? Will you let the blinded see if I but call your name? Will you set the prisoners free and never be the same? Will you kiss the leper clean and do so much as this unseen and admit to what I mean in you and you in me? Will you love the you hide if I but call your name? Will you quell the fear inside and never be the same? Will you use the faith you found to reshape the world around? Through my sight and touch and sound in you and you in me? Lord, your summons echoes true when you but call my name. Let me turn and follow you and never be the same. In your company, I'll go where your love and footsteps show. Thus I'll move and live and grow in you and you in me. Amen. So I pray that this can help just set you on maybe a path towards some more meaningful and rich, intentional and rich pilgrimage walks in your journey with God. So we have some time now that we can just open up for questions, answers, comments.
Hi, Robert Carrillo here. Thank you for joining our class. If you found it at all helpful, please support our ministry by either hitting the like button or even better, by subscribing. And find out plenty more at our website, thewayministry.global. See you there.